It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, we're talking about BYD Budget Defender, Emme Hall's class-winning off-road Miata, Rover Faux Pas, and a tip-top tooltip on tire tools. And now, without delay, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the galvanized bumper to Steven's pedestrian-friendly valence. I am the torn trousers of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangle and 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangle and 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, this week in the news, I don't know if you've heard of a company called BYD. I certainly haven't. God knows what they make. But one thing that they're going to make is what they're calling a budget Defender, but not like the Ineos Grenadier, a new Defender. It actually looks a lot like what was that little Scion bus thing that everybody said the new Defender looks like? It's sort of one of those.
Is it an X? Scion?
Yeah, it's an XC, XK, Scion TC. I know TC is the car.
Yeah.
XC maybe? Are they all C's? I don't know. Anyways,
couldn't say.
It's a boxy little kind of thing of do, but it is actually apparently it's an off-road vehicle and it is supposed to be budget priced.
That's what the B stands for.
Budget. It's like bring your own Defender.
Last time I heard the acronym BYD was Bring Your Own Dachshund. It was like a
Bring Your Own Dachshund,
dog park event.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think this came out of that, much like the Grenadier came from a bunch of guys at a bar. Yeah,
same people are now building a car.
Yeah, they're building a car. Yeah, exactly. So, this is apparently from China's leading vehicle manufacturer. Yeah, no, they're apparently the leading. And they will sell this car globally. Now, I don't know if they'll sell it globally and here in the United States. I don't know what that means. It's apparently going to be sold. It's going to be a budget car. I don't know what that means, but it is a rugged off-roader with 617 horsepower. And apparently it has a hybrid powertrain that will go about 746 miles. And it's a ladder frame chassis, unlike the new Defender. It is more like the old Defender.
Is there an actual photo of this vehicle or is it all renderings?
There is a photo, but there's no way that it isn't a rendering. It is on a road, and it is, there are palm trees, but I don't know. It is in like camo and things. We'll put the link to the article in the show notes, but apparently 2024 global launch, and I guess it's.
They're taking pre-orders now. We are also producing the Underpowered Hour Defender replacement. It's got 1,000 horsepower. It's all electric. Goes 500 miles on a charge.
Yeah.
Send your deposits right now.
It's got everything you want. It's got flappy paddle gearbox or shifting or both at the same time. Whatever you want. It's got it for sure.
Yeah.
This one is supposed to be between $57,000 and $86,000.
And
you'll be able to get like a super luxury version, I guess, for about $115. That at some point it's going to be available or it won't be available. And the chances of that being available in these United States, I think, is pretty low. I don't think we're going to see it over here, unfortunately. I know how big of a fan that you are of SUVs that nobody wants to buy. But anyways, it's the BYD SF is the name of the car. They're not, maybe in SF. Mandarin, the acronyms are make more sense, but the SF.
I feel like in Mandarin, they would have characters that are not.
Yeah, it's going to be
letters.
It's going to be kanji letters. Yeah, it's going to be, we'll have to see. We'll have to see if the SF is everything we hope for. And I'll tell you what, the first question we'll ask anybody who's driven one is, how's the steering feel?
So you heard it here, folks. Bring your Dachshund, San Francisco edition.
San Francisco edition, not a Defender. Throw down some cash and why not? It's the TikTok of automobiles.
I really wish we could have like a face-off with all of these sort of Defender wannabes all together.
I think we know
a road test.
Hands down, the little D is going to win. I mean,
the little D.
The little D. The little D is going to top that list for me every time. Every time. Every time. Speaking of little cars doing unexpected things, our friend of Liza and Jenna and idol to myself and to Abigail, both of us want to build an off-road Miata. Emme Hall has won her class at the Mint 400 out in Las Vegas this past weekend. A brand new class, the Gambler class, I think, as an homage to the Gambler up in your neck of the woods. She was able to win her class in Buddy, the Miata, the off-road rally Miata, which has done 1,000-mile off-road races. It's actually a fairly decorated off-road Miata. I mean, there's not too many in that, in that particular segment,
sure.
But this is certainly the best one without question. And we'll put a link for those who haven't seen Buddy, the off-road Miata. We'll put a link in the show notes, and it is, it's awesome. I mean, it really is.
How is your off-road Miata project coming?
Yeah, well, we have a minor parking issue that we are dealing with at the workshop, where, some of my ne'er-do-well neighbors have literally abandoned cars with airbags that have gone off and things. And the community that I share this 16-unit industrial complex with is none too happy about derelict cars just hanging out around the buildings. And so we're kind of waiting for that storm to blow over before we add our own.
Have you been approached or have you been burned in effigy in relation to this?
Funny enough, they're specifically targeting the Widowmaker, my ne'er-do-well forklift, as a potential problem, because it does park outside of the shop because it's not safe for it to park inside where there may be people or something. It needs to be chained up to the building outside to prevent it from killing again. It is being targeted for removal, which I've said I welcome someone who's willing to tow that. I know most of the flatbed operators in the town here, and not a single one of them would be willing to tow that thing. So I think I'm safe, but we'll see. An update on that next week, maybe.
Sounds like a challenge somebody might be willing to accept. If you have a tow truck in the greater Los Angeles area and you would like to make some money, scrap value that is, come tow away Steven's forklift.
Yep, exactly. It's just outside. It's not even locked. I mean, if you can get it running, you can.
We will send the address to our Patreon.
It could be a special. There's a summer breakdown right there. We'll come and retrieve that. But unfortunately. So, anyways, we are planning an off-road Miata. It is on the list, but we have to get the current Miata running. We have to do some work on the 80-inch. We've got projects are in.
You can get an on-road Freelander before you can get an off-road Miata.
I have to actually get a working Freelander, and then we'll do an off-road Miata. That's exactly right. Now, latest updates. As quick sideline on the Freelander, the undisputed king of Land Rovers, is I spoke with the transmission gentleman, and he said, "Yeah, the transmission's working fine. They rebuilt it. It's great. Back in the car, running great." There is now as he mentioned it, a scary sounding clunk coming from the back of the car. He thinks maybe the rear axle, anytime it drives at all.
Maybe it's just the rear wipers going and the blade needs to be replaced.
I am sure that's what it is. I'm sure that's what it is. So we're coming very close to just abandoning. My idea was, I'll just send it to Ed. He'll deal with it. It'll be fine. I don't have time to work on it. I don't work on cars even remotely close to that new, so I don't know what any of that shit is. I think we're just going to have to get it back here. And,
turbo encabulator has gone bad. We're just going to have
to, exactly. I think Dixon's suggestion to drop the drivetrain and put in a 1.6 liter is probably coming closer and closer to being
the Shaun the Sheep Rover. That's what that is.
Shaun the Sheep, this Freelander.
Yeah, looks like a Defender, but it's got a Series 1 drivetrain.
We're gonna take a far more collectible Land Rover's drivetrain and shove it underneath the least collectible Land Rover possibly on the planet. So yeah, there you go. That's what's happening in Freelander town.
The rear end? Do you think the rear differential is bad? I think
it could be. Well, they have a viscous coupling drive shafts in those things. That's how part of the all-wheel drive system works. It's possible that has gone sideways, which is totally possible. I guess those things do fail, and when they fail, they essentially just lose their viscousness, and so it's like a drive shaft that has, the bolts slackened all the way off. It's just clunking like crazy. At least, I haven't driven it. So that is in the way he described it. I think it's probably something to do with hopefully it's the drive shaft and not the rear differential, because those are, again, even more difficult to find. And they're like, of course, unrebuildable because they're all dumb and they're partially electric. And
how old is this car?
2003. Yeah, it's not even that old, really. I mean,
it's kind of old. It's 20 years
I have much older cars that run way, way better. So
that are easier to get parts for.
Way easier to get parts for.
A friend of mine has a Toyota pickup from 2006. 2006 Toyota pickup. Delivery van took out the door and fender on his car. Toyota can't get parts for it.
Really?
Can't get a fender, can't get a door.
You're just like, nope, that's it. It's total.
2006.
Total. And yet you can get a panel for your 80-inch. No problem.
No problem.
It's called the CKD boys. It'll be here at the end of the week.
Speaking of the CKD boys, they called the other day and they were like, we need some new old stock brake drums. And I was like, no problem. I'll send you some. Shipping's like $450 to Australia. They were like, what? And so they had me buy a roller bag, like that you pull through an airport, and send it to their friend who was traveling to Australia. They put it in their carry-on luggage. So some poor suckers carrying on 4 brake drums onto a Qantas flight headed to Australia with a bunch of brake drums in it.
Are the boys going to use that on their Kuma Run Series 1?
I think Alex is going to use it on one of his 80s, yeah.
Wow. Well, there you go. That I will say, Alex, as we've said before, has a special power when it comes to shipping things.
Resourceful fella.
Yeah, he's a resourceful fella.
Yeah. Yeah, those boats of migrants that are like, crossing borders, and that's just Alex shipping stuff.
Alex, he's got each one of those guys is carrying like a brake master cylinder.
They're not drug mules. They're Rover part mules.
Rover mules, sneaking them all out of South America. Yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first time. Those guys are very resourceful, very, very resourceful, Rob, at the game. So it's again, I'm not going to see those guys at Kuma. I really want to. They're super fun. We got to have them on the show. We've been saying it now since we saw them in the UK more than a year ago now. And we've yet to follow up on that, but
we've all been busy.
It's been a busy year. They're making panels, they're making new cars, they're on the front of magazines. Very popular.
Speaking of busy, the owners of Prince Phillip's Defender have been very busy. They've been selling that thing right and left. So
they sure have. They sure have.
Yeah, the 110 with the 2.4 liter Ford engine in it. This car's coming for sale again.
Yeah.
And it's tripled in price since it last sold 9 months ago.
That is incredible.
It's a good investment.
123,000 pounds is the last sales amount. That is insane. I mean, it is just a TDCI Defender. Like it's especially in the UK, that's not particularly remarkable. It's not even the good year. It's old. It's too new to be one of the good ones. So
I think it sold for what, 40-some thousand last time?
Something like that. Yeah, it was right around 50,000 pounds.
Quick turnaround.
Yeah, that's pretty good appreciation. That's like buying any Defender here in North America.
No doubt.
Same. In fact, if you were to buy just a normal non-Prince Phillip 2010 Defender, TDCI Defender, and get it here to the United States, I think actually 123,000 pounds to actually have it landed and registered, that's probably a pretty good deal. By the time you got it,
you can't legally register it, even if it's quote unquote registered. It's still not legal.
I think if you homologate it or whatever they call it, I think like you go through and basically they like build you a new car. I'm not sure how they do it, but there is some process.
If you're a registered importer and you go through and have it federalized,
right? Federalized, yes,
and that means crash testing it. That means having all of the like seatbelt labels and like warning labels and all this. It's basically, for all intents and purposes, practically impossible to legally register it.
Unless it's in Montana, then it's fine.
And purportedly, this is because of emissions and Department of Transportation safety regulations. That you cannot have and drive this vehicle on the roadway. However, it's perfectly normal and legal to drive like a 110-year-old Model T on the road.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
Completely.
Linus does it all the time, and they let Linus do it, which is even like a next level of dangerous. But that's fine. I mean, it's a car where if you're not actively doing something, it tries to escape where you are. Like it doesn't stop when you take your feet off the pedals. It like goes faster. But God forbid I have a Jimny. No way.
Can't do it.
Unacceptable. That is way too big of a risk. To be fair, probably is. But
it's also potentially damaging to the domestic compact 4x4 SUV market.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The key truck market, the local key truck market.
Oh, it's just huge, right? I mean, like, think of all those models you can get that are, chimney-sized SUVs. Yeah, I mean, every U.S. manufacturer makes 3 or 4 of those. So, yeah, it would be
drives me crazy. And speaking of things that drive me crazy,
one of my favorite segments, the grumpy old Ike segment, Rover Faux Pas, or What Grinds Ike's Gears. This week we have some particularly gripey ones as well. Like
many things that drive me crazy.
Yeah, we're getting to the distillation of the purest, the marrow of gripes, if you will, in a few of these. So the first one is in regards to the canvas hood, the soft top, if you will, for your series car. What's your gripe with that?
Well, this is a red flag for me. So when I see an advertisement for a Land Rover, I almost know that the owner has no working knowledge of the vehicle when I see the canvas top flaps tied on the outside of the soft top. So for those of you that have a soft top, you know that the top has small pockets through which the straps and rear flaps of the canvas pass. Yeah. And it's secured to the side of the vehicle, keeps it wind and water tight mostly.
Yep.
And it's tidy. It's got a nice little little pocket. So it's very common to see a vehicle for sale that is sold by a flipper reseller, somebody who doesn't know Land Rover, somebody who's never owned or driven a Land Rover. Yeah. And that top is tied with the flaps on the outside, catching the wind, making it flap and flutter if you were to drive it this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I almost know that person, can't answer any reasonable questions about the vehicle.
No.
Probably doesn't own it. Probably hasn't driven it.
Yeah.
An untucked flap. Oh, it's crazy.
That's the worst.
It's crazy. Drives you crazy.
Yeah. It is a little bit of an art to figure out exactly where all the little ropes and buckles and everything's go. But there are an infinite number of videos on the old YouTube or anywhere else, or, the instructions that came with your Exmoor top or whatever on how to put this. Actually, the fine folks at Atlantic British actually have a really good video.
Do they?
On how to put a series top on. Yeah, they've got a good
nice.
They got a good one.
I haven't seen that. So I have to check it out.
No. Hard to figure out like how to put your, pre-production 80-inch top on or something, but it's not a huge market. I don't think it's
actually, the Series 2 tops have some like hidden cleats in the gutters that go above the doors. And there's some other things that are a little bit more esoteric that are not necessarily obvious, but it's like having your fly down, your pants on backwards. Like,
it's not great.
Drives me crazy.
Yep.
And it's usually on a car that's for sale and it's been restored in typically a low labor cost country, and somebody's imported it, might have the Santana badges removed and just Land Rover badges replacing the Santana badges, something like that. At any rate, it's just a red flag when you see that canvas top not tied properly.
Yeah, I mean that's the sign of a reputable importer, somebody like Ivan or Rover Talk or something like that. Those guys know it's a good car. It's comes from maybe a country that is not always known for its reputation, but there's good people, and then there's the vast majority of people that are it's a nightmare, and then they all end up on bring a trailer.
So what drives you crazy? What grinds your gears?
Similarly, I feel like the inefficient fitting of soft tops is one, but another one that you actually mentioned when we were doing the rundown, and I completely agree, is unsecured wiring harnesses.
Oh,
wiring harnesses that are just sort of hanging out, in there. Every wiring harness has a certain number of, depending on the vintage of the vehicle, either metal or, in the case of the Series 3, little plastic clippy-doos that that hold the wiring harness in a variety of places. And there's, you can see someone who's had a huge attention to detail because those are not just present, but they're in the right places. They're under the right bolts, or they're affixed correctly. And because otherwise your wiring harness is just sort of like it's just sort of like a zip line between different connectors in your engine bay. And there's a lot of vibration there.
There can be a time and place for certain things being unsupported. However, in the case of a wiring harness, never acceptable. And I think this is another thing that you see on sort of shoddily restored vehicles is they say, oh, it's got a brand new wiring harness, and they've purchased the wiring harness and they've put it in the car.
Yes.
And all of the clips all of the fasteners, all of
gone.
the support for the harness, it's gone. And they haven't bothered to find new ones or replace them.
No.
So the entire weight of the harness is hanging off of the terminals on the backside of the dash or, the voltage regulator, what have you. And so it's just every time it goes over a bump, it's just got the whole weight of the harness tugging on all of the terminals.
Yeah. And some of those terminals, especially the older ones, bullet connectors and things, can slip loose from making an electrical connection and still look like they're plugged in. So it's a great mystery as to, is it unplugged? Is it plugged? And so you end up having to go and test everything. And that's why those little supports are there from the factory, because I'm sure at some point the car didn't have it and it fell apart on them. And they're like, we should really put a little strappy-do on there, and they did, and it made it better. And
check your wiring harnesses, folks. Tie up those harnesses.
Tie up those harnesses. Keep that shit in check. What about you, Ike? What's another thing that really gets you, that really bothers you?
Oh, when something is secured to the car with a rivet that is the longest possible unsealed rivet from Ace Hardware.
Yeah.
And they've set the rivet, and you look behind it, and it's got like an inch of crooked, wavy aluminum, behind the rivet. Oh, drives me crazy.
Like a junkie with like a really long cigarette that they haven't ashed
yet.
It's
just like a cigarette that's been put out and it's like been glued to the backside of the Land Rover. So cappings and door seals and all manner of things are secured with these rivets. Drives me crazy.
Pop riveted door seals is another. And that semi-tubular rivets are not that hard to find or to put in, and
they're so tidy, those things.
And they're so nice looking. They look so good, and they're really easy. They're easy to do. They're, in fact, in many ways, they're easier to do than pop rivets, especially for seals and things. Much easier.
Yeah, it's true.
It's rough. What about how do you feel about Phillips head screws in your vintage Land Rover?
There's like a very limited number of Phillips screws on an early Land Rover, and so that's another red flag for me when I see a Land Rover that's just covered in Phillips screws.
It's zinc.
No one cares. No one cares. Nothing says I don't care like putting Phillips screws in a Land Rover or in the dash. Drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. I'll slot it all the way around, even though I understand that Phillips screws they're
not great.
Superior in many ways.
Yeah, they're better. They're mechanically better, but they look terrible, and they're not right.
They look really bad. But there are a few places that have Phillips screws on a Land Rover originally. One is the starter. The field coils are secured to the starter with Phillips screws.
That's right.
That is one place where they're acceptable.
The dash vents on a Defender are Phillips. So there's actually lots of Phillips screws. The same as the Series 3. They're the same screws.
I feel like after 1980, Land Rover didn't care about that stuff either.
Nobody cared.
They replaced all the hammer rivets with pop rivets or blind rivets, if you call them that, and started putting Phillips screws. They didn't care anymore. They're like, meh.
They're phoning it in. Like, we can't believe people are still buying these things. Have you not heard of a Toyota Hilux yet? Anyways, there is a fair amount of Robertson head screws in, Canadian Land Rovers as well. Is that better or worse? Or like a Allen or Torx? Is that better or worse? The same amount of awful? Yeah.
I feel like those fasteners they belong securing the partitions in a bathroom. That's what they belong.
Yeah.
That's where they belong.
Well. There you go. Strong feelings on the Land Rover Faux Pas. That's another exciting installment of, Ike complains about fasteners and rivets.
I'm the grumpy old man. Get off my lawn.
That's what keeps people coming back to this show. It's the vigorous discussion of rivets, for sure. So lastly, a tip-top tool tip, a pretty broad one today on tire tools. And, as you know, Ike, the Land Rover has 4 tires and sometimes a couple of spares. That may or may not have air in them, or may not be roadworthy, but I suppose that counts for the tires on the car as well. But if your tires are less than roadworthy, or if they have encountered something off of the road that is particularly damaging, you may be in a situation where you need to employ a tire tool. The first of which is probably the most common, is a tire puncture remedy. What do you like for a tire puncture remedy? What's your favorite puncture solve?
My favorite puncture solve, I'm gonna say the plug. The plug is really a nice thing. Don't have to.
And you like the
tire.
fruit roll up, the fruit strip style, or what kind of plug do you like?
Yeah, it's like a gummy pipe cleaner. is how I like to describe them. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it looks like a fuzzy pipe cleaner, and it's got like an adhesive on it.
Yeah.
And you file the hole in the tire, and then you add the adhesive and then the plug, and you push it in and turn it and pull it out, and it's sealed, and it works really well, and it's long lasting. You don't have to demount the tire. It's amazingly convenient, and you can repair a puncture in minutes as opposed to having to demount the tire, repair a tube, et cetera, et cetera. It is a super, super time saver. And for those of you that have never done it or never used one of those, highly recommend you look up a video on those and that style of plug.
They're great. Have you ever plugged a sidewall with one of those guys?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I have a BFG that had 10 miles on it. That got a sidewall puncture. Like the first trail I took this car on, it was actually on my Dormobile. And I got to the top of this kind of gnarly rocky climb. And I get out of the car and I just hear like a and I was like, had 10 miles on it. And it was a tire that was not readily available. And so it is now my spare, but it has 3 plugs in the sidewall.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the ones that, I mean, people primarily use them for motorcycles? Doesn't matter. The tire on a motorcycle isn't that much different than a car tire. The little mushroom guys that you kind of squirt them in, and then the pressure of the air will sort of force the mushroom side against the inside and seal them up. Do you like those guys?
Yeah, they used to have a similar thing, like back in the 20s, you know, when you had to demount the tire. It had a tube in it. They had a similar type, and it was almost like a rivet or a binder post, and it would squeeze, and you put a vulcanizing compound on it, and it would press through the hole in the tire, and it's kind of similar in design to those.
Yeah, and these one now I have a little gun that will sort of do it from the outside and kind of shoot it in, and you kind of pull it just the right way, and it'll kind of expand into a little hole. I find for like little holes in the sidewall, those work really good. They don't work so well in thick tread because you can't quite get the tool in and stuff. The nice thing about the gummy pipe cleaner is that, the tools are quite long, so you can get it in between lugs on the tire. You can work stuff in there. But the little mushroom guys work pretty good on the outside of the tire. I like a mushroom guy on the outside. Have you ever used the screw-in stud with the vulcanizing compound sort of set on the outside of it?
I haven't used that style.
They're, I believe, an agriculture remedy, and they look like they're a little triangular screw, and they have a Phillips head, unfortunately, on the back of them, and they work really good for just straight punctures. So if you've got a stick or something on the trail that's gone, you'll get that one little root that's sticking up, and somehow it's razor sharp and will go directly into your tire, but it just makes like a tiny little, 1/4-inch hole. You can get these, and they come in 5 or 6 different sizes, and you screw them into the tire. I like to do it start them with an impact gun, just to zip them in there real quick, and then hand tighten them down so they're flush with the tire. And the friction of screwing them into the rubber causes the vulcanizing compound, which I think is just sort of, I don't know if it's wax or what it is, but it's encased in something. And as that friction of the tire goes through, it melts that protective layer and causes the super glue vulcanizing whatever that fucking is, to cure into the little plug. And I got to say, like, especially sidewalls, again, they work really good. And, deep inside of a tread, they work pretty good. If for whatever reason your little gummy worms, sometimes the hole's just a little bit too big and you got to do 2 plugs and they don't quite seal right. I sometimes like to use those little guys. And I do, again, I don't think any of this stuff is like DOT legal. I think if you've plugged a tire, technically the tire is no good anymore. You got to take a tire shop, get it repaired or whatever. But, and certainly the agricultural plugs aren't meant for on-road use and whatever. And whatever you do is your own business. I don't care what you do. But they are kind of cool. The screw-in ones are pretty cool. And there's a new...
Plugs in the tread are pretty safe. The sidewall, maybe not so good. That indicates a problem with the sidewall. So wouldn't use those in the sidewall.
It'll balloon the sidewall and stuff if you didn't, if it starts to tear too much or whatever. But, again, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you've blown out a tire, how about this? I always plug before I go to my spare. And only once the tire is not pluggable anymore, for some reason, it just won't hold air, will I put the spare on, because at least if I've got a plugged tire on the car that's still working, I still have a spare. And if things go really sideways, then I still have a spare. But if I do something and I've already used up my spare, then I feel like you're in a little bit more trouble. But maybe that's just
that's fair.
Always prepared Canadian mentality.
What's your least favorite method of repairing a tire?
Taking the tire off of the wheel and doing anything inside of the wheel. Those are, What do you like for a tire spoon? I have a tire spoon pry bar that's probably about, I don't know, it's maybe 2.5 feet long or something, 3 feet long. And it has a little metal fulcrum piece welded to the underside of it. It's meant for a big rig tire, and then the little spoon on the front. And it just gives you that little leveraging spot where, some people put like the screwdriver handle or something underneath it, but this is like welded on there, and it'll let you climb that bead off of the wheel real nice.
I have the same one.
They're good. That's a good, that's something, and it's easy. It's small and round, and so you can just stick it inside your truck. And if you ever need to, for whatever reason, valve stems or something just get totally destroyed, and you have to get inside of that wheel for some reason and take it out. I really like that. I'm a big fan of that particular tire spoon because it's pretty quick, and you can kind of get in and out of there. But yeah, if you have to repair from the inside of the tire, that's a less fun day. Like you said, with the gummy worms, you can be back on the trail in 5 minutes. You can you plug it, put air back in it, and you're off. But if you're taking the wheel out, it's a bigger job.
The tire. Yeah, if you're taking the tire off the wheel, it's not as fun.
What about a sidewall patch? Do you like have you tried a sidewall patch, the little rubber squares that you sort of crazy glue over the sidewall?
I have not done that. I have friends that have done that. To stitch the sidewall split with wire and then patched it with that kind of patch. But yeah, I've not had a recent sidewall failure that was, it seems to be like in a small area, small tear. I feel like it's rare to have a larger tear, but not a complete blowout. Right. Usually I feel like when the sidewall fails, it's completely ruined, catastrophic, not repairable. So it's like a narrow band of damage that is kind of repairable by those more extreme efforts.
Yeah, there's sort of like a, I would say maximum maybe 1.5 inches by 1.5 inch kind of area that you could potentially plug. I've never actually had to stitch a tire closed with wire, but I have. I've used the sidewall patch, and they're fine. They take a really long time though. Like you put them on, you put the patch on, and there's all these steps, and it takes quite a while.
Gotta wait a day. You gotta put it in an oven.
Technically, you vulcanize it. It's there's a whole thing. But in those cases, I will switch to the spare, patch that tire so that it has time to cure and all that. The Leland brothers from Australia, their documentary films of them going to these parts of Australia well before, this was in 1960s, well before there were roads there. They would have this liquid sort of vulcanizing putty, and they would just scoop it out of the can with their bare hands and sort of rub it into the tire to get it to sort of seal up, and just stick it on the roof of the car and let it sort of kick off as they were driving around, and then be able to swap that back onto the car as needed. I don't know what that does to your hands.
Pretty sure they were just whittling new tires out of wood.
Yeah. Just bolt them up when needed. And there was like a baby in there with them. It's like the whole family's there. It's insane. They're fantastic. That's a famous Land Rover owner that's definitely worth looking.
It's a good series.
They're super fun. They are crazy, and they've doing some pretty amazing things. And they were some of the first folks to fit the agricultural size, tires to Land Rovers, a really giant, high flotation tires to do some of these expedition things. They look like they're the Southern Jeep Safaris. But it's 1960 and they're in Australia and it's a Land Rover. But they got the big mudder tires. It's pretty cool. Anyways, and vulcanized hands, completely vulcanized. They're completely waterproof, fireproof. And it's whatever, no problem. So they all died in their early 30s from vulcanizing poisoning. But other than that, it's great. Speaking of vulcanizing poisoning, we're coming to the end of the show. But I thought we would mention that if you haven't checked out the Underpowered Hour YouTube, there's some good stuff up there. There's the comedy stylings of Ike and Linus talking about winching. There's some tip-top tool tips up there about riveting, of course, because
several people enjoy listening to the show or watching the show while at work.
every episode is available up there. You can see what we look like, and why you would want that, I don't know. It's horrible. But
it's frightening.
If you wanted to, you could see what we look like, and what Linus looks like, Liza, Jenna. And our last video with Mercedes about the Grenadier already has 1.6 thousand views. So
that's a great interview. Yeah, she did a really nice job breaking down the Grenadier.
Now, I will apologize to the one person that commented that we didn't talk about steering feel nearly enough or early enough on, and that we were fixated on toot buttons, which is true. I mean, if you're coming to this show for actual automotive journalism, I'm afraid you've taken a wrong turn. But yeah, I guess we'll have to talk to her about the
there's a legitimate complaint that one in particular automotive journalist made about the recirculating ball type steering on those cars, but I think it's going to be better than my Series 1 Land Rover, if I'm being honest.
It probably is. Yeah. And if if you're coming to this show for the exact same thing you could read in 5 other places, then well, I apologize.
Don't alienate our listeners.
Yeah, it's true. We're not Motor Trend.
Listener.
If you've gotten this, if you've gotten to episode 108 and haven't realized that this is not going to become Motor Trend at some point. Yeah, anyways. So, at that, Ike, it has been a slice as always. We're prepping for getting you over to Kuma. A big order of stickers just headed your way. Brand new.
They're
fresh,
down under.
Delicious Aussie edition stickers. So
we're going to bandage so many snake bites with those things.
It's going to be amazing. If you see Ike, Jenna, or Linus, or Maddie at Kuma, make sure you request your stickers. There's
Do you see Australian wildlife with stickers on it?
You'll know that Ike
You'll know where
there's
a
little tiny Ike on the back of a koala. You'll know that Ike has been there. And their arms are they can't quite reach back there. So
it's really sad.
Stuck there. It's very irritating. It's incredibly sad. And that's why Ike's never allowed back in Australia.
I got the booting.
All right, buddy. Well, it's been a slice as always. We'll have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, Steven. See you on the trail.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Veris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Veris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.